There it is. Bart played us in on the pad today. That was a special intro.
That was a padded diddle.
He was playing his flammabartadiddles. That's
that was a rough jimadiddle.
Oh. Hey everyone, thanks so much for coming and joining us. Welcome to the Drummers Education Connection. My name's Jeremy Steinkohler, here with my good friends and just great guys, great drummers, great people. Chip Ritter down in Tucson, Arizona, Bart Roble down in SoCal, and today we are honored once again to have our dear friend of the show and personal friend, Jim Royle from Connecticut.
Yeah, Jim.
Great to be here.
Well, we love having you on every time, Jim. It's always a pleasure. Thank you. And we will say that we miss our good friend our good friend Rick Stojak, who is not here today, but he'll be back next week. And before we get started talking about our topic for the day, we want to kick around our little good things. So we talk about what some good things that are happening because there's so much shitty happening in the world. Let's focus on some positive stuff for just a minute, and also give it a chance to catch up with one another and hear what's going on for us. So, Jim, we'll start with you, man. What's happening for you?
Okay, I got a couple things real quick. A real good thing is that has nothing to do with music is that my son Ryan is going to be graduating with his doctorate from NYU in like 3 weeks.
Oh, nice. That's fantastic, man.
So he'll be the first doctor in the Royle family, and I'm just head over heels. So
amazing.
That's real big, yeah. And the second thing is that this is the time of year where Silver Steel and our Royalty Steel Pan group, we're building all new repertoire for the next season. So it is exciting. You know, the big group's 14 people, and like you have all these new arrangements that we're doing. So everybody's charged, and it, including myself. It's like, you know, a rebirth. So that's my good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So cool. And congratulations on your son. That's
cool. That's a really big deal, man. That's really exciting. Congrats to you and kudos to him.
Thank you.
What did he get his PhD in?
It's going to be in physical therapy.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
So it was a grind, and at NYU, they're not messing around. And he has one more 8-week clinical to do in 2 different places, and then go to work.
Awesome. Chip, what's going on? Good for you, buddy.
Man, you know what? I'm really just excited that I got my clinic handouts ready.
Ooh, yeah.
All right.
For my double bass drum clinic for Deck Day on April 26th. I'm stoked about that. And I heard that today's the last chance to get in on our early bird special. So if anybody's interested in coming and checking us out in Orange, California, go to the website. I'll put a link in the comments and go get your tickets.
Nice.
For those of you new to this, Deck Day is our annual event where we actually get together in person. We can stand each other for at least one day in person, and we have 4 live drum clinics.
That's
taught by myself, Chip, Bart, and Rick, and we're going to do it this year at Aquarian Drumheads on April 26th. Chip's going to put a link in the chat, and Mike Brucker from Aquarian is going to do a presentation on picking drum heads and tell us all about all the different types of heads and how they make them and what they're used for and how to pick them for yourself.
Does Mike know that he's doing that?
Yes, he does.
Okay, good.
Yeah. And then we also have a ton of stuff we're giving away for free. So, I mean, you do have to pay to come to the clinic, but we've got donations from Gretsch, from Peisty, from Sabian, from Vic Firth, from Protection Racket, from Snare Weight, from I know I'm not mentioning them all because I can't possibly remember though. There's so many. Kelly Shoe, all these great products. We're going to raffle them off. We're giving everything away, and everyone will walk away with a ton of great drum gear. So it's a fun hang. Sign up while you still can, because today is the last day to get the discount. It's $25 more if you sign up tomorrow than if you sign up today.
Yeah, get it today.
Bart, what's happening for you, bud?
Well, you know what, guys, I'm really looking forward to Deck Day. It's going to be a ton of fun. I love getting together with you guys and hanging out and going out to dinner afterwards and doing the whole drum hang thing. It's so much fun. I'm so happy for Jim and his son having a PhD in physical therapy. Did you guys know that I have an LMNOP in physical therapy?
No.
I have an LMNOP.
What does that mean?
That means nothing.
It's nothing. It's just me being stupid. I'm just an LMNOP, you know. It's right there in the middle of the alphabet.
All right.
Sorry, I had to just be dumb for a minute.
Okay.
No, We're looking forward to Deck Day. I'm really excited about that. My new book, Drum Up Your Business, is live on Hudson Music. Should have hard copies in hand soon from Hal Leonard. Once we get that off the printing presses, that should be soon. But right now the digital version is up and going good, and I've gotten a lot of great reviews for that. And everything is great. I woke up above the dirt today, so that's a good thing. And I'm just happy to be alive. So yeah. What about you, Jeremy? What do you got going on, buddy?
I've got a lot of good stuff going on. But I'll cherry pick my favorite to share with you guys today, so we can get started. We went and my son was back for spring break. He's at Northwestern studying jazz piano and engineering, and we went and saw one of his heroes and one of his mentors, Taylor Eitste, who's a phenomenal jazz multi-Grammy winning jazz piano player, like one of the top dudes in the world now. And they're good friends, and we saw the show, and it was incredible. And he was saying during his performance, he was playing a tune that a friend of his wrote. And he said, there's a lot of songs being written by young people today that are just as worthy of being played and being considered standards as some of the older stuff that everybody knows. And after the show, we were talking to him, and he said to Evan, "I was talking about you when I said that."
That's cool.
Yeah, wow. It was really, I got the chills when he said that. I was like, oh my gosh. And so with my help, he has applied for a couple of grants to record an album of all his original music this coming summer. So crossing fingers, knock on wood, that one or two of those come through. And we've assembled just like some of the top players in the Bay Area to play on his record with him. And so it's all his original music. Really, really excited about it. And Taylor, if he's available, is going to come to the session and help him consult on the arrangements and the charts and everything. So nice. Really, really exciting.
Just have to find a good drummer.
Yeah, well, ha ha ha. I'm the only guy that would do it for free.
Sorry.
That's all right. That's all right.
You set yourself up.
Low hanging fruit. Yeah. All right. So speaking of which, today's topic is gratitude, and we're going to talk about the ways it can show up and how important it is, the role it plays in our lives, how it flows and weaves into our music and our playing and our relationships and all that kind of stuff. And we'd love to hear from you guys about your experience with having gratitude, finding gratitude, lacking gratitude, struggling to find gratitude, whatever it is. We want to hear about it. This is good stuff to talk about. So I will kick it to our esteemed guest, Jim. I know you've got a lot to be thankful for, especially lately.
Yes.
But honestly, Jim, even though you've been struggling with some health stuff that has been going very well for you as of late, you have struck me as long as I've known you as a person who practiced gratitude and was very grateful and sort of aware and appreciating all the good things that he had going for him.
Absolutely. It just happened, some of the health stuff just creeped up on me. It wasn't like I knew about it. And this is my thing. Every morning I walk the dogs for 1.5 miles, and it's a gratitude walk. And it's like almost a half hour, and I'm going through this list that is pretty much like it fills that whole time. And it starts with family, like my parents and my siblings, and everything in between, whether it's sponsors, no matter what it is, because you have to keep reminding yourself that you didn't do it alone.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't do it alone. And so many people helped you along the way. And as you were talking about what we're going to do, this topic, I thought about when we're younger, for anyone young who's listening to this, maybe I'm off, but when I was in my 20s, I wasn't thinking about gratitude. I'm sorry, I wasn't.
No, me neither.
I was just fighting the fight and like all excited. Again, I had passion and all that, but you got to mature a little bit to really feel and have the gratitude start to come.
Or maybe you have to go through. I agree with that, and that's been my experience too. But maybe also for some people, you can find it younger when you have to go through some real hardship.
Yeah.
Going
through any kind of storm in life, when you're in the middle of it or on the other side of it, especially, gratitude is is easier to see, wow, I'm so grateful to have made it through the storm.
You know, I one time I had to, this is a crazy story, but I had to take an Uber from the Bay Area down to Monterey, which is like a 2.5 hour Uber. And it was a really unusual circumstance, but I did. And the guy who drove me was a refugee, or I mean, he was a American citizen, but he was from Afghanistan. And we were talking and talking. We had 2.5 hours to talk, and I was talking about politics, and he said, you know, I really, I understand what you're saying, and it makes all sense to me. It's not that I disagree with you, but I just don't care. All I care about is that I'm able to live somewhere that's not being bombed.
God,
Wow.
no
Wow.
kidding.
You know, and that he
That's heavy.
he and his family were able to live somewhere safe, and you know, and take advantage of all these freedoms that he didn't have there, like the freedom of safety. And so, yeah, I think you know, it's easy to take for, it's so easy to take for granted. It's so easy to take for granted all the good things that we have, even though there's lots of bad things. You know, we have it better than many people in the world.
I agree with that. And I want to just kind of catapult off of what you said. And I'm not even putting myself in that situation of having lived there. But the first tour that I did with the Sam Morrison band, I've been in that band for 25 years. So that's, first of all, like at the top of one of the top things I'm grateful for. My wife and my home, I'm so grateful for. But the employment of that band for 25 years has been amazing. The first tour that I did with him, he calls me up. I'd subbed on a couple gigs, and he goes, hey, look, my drummer left and my guitar player left, and I've got a 3-week tour of Europe coming up, and it's yours if you want it. I said, I'm in. Well, the tour was a tour of Eastern Europe during the time of war when Milosevic was creating, you know, was doing genocide against the Serbians and stuff like that through Bosnia and Croatia and Kosovo. And that's what we played. We played all those countries, Macedonia, Germany, Hungary. And you don't, that's when I kind of started really being so grateful to have just been born where I was born. Right. Because it's one thing to see that stuff on television, even if you watch like some horrific thing on YouTube. It's like you're taking it in visually, but you're not there. When you're there and you can feel, we were 20 miles from Parliament the night they stormed it to get Milosevic out. When you can feel the concussions from bombs, it's you can't describe it. And then the other thing that you can't describe, and it won't ever leave my head, is the smell. It was unbelievable. And that's when I kind of started getting into, like, I am so glad that I was born where I was born. The simplest little thing. I could have ended up anywhere in the world, right? I could have been born anywhere in the world, but I was not born here. And I was so grateful for that. So sometimes your circumstances that you find yourself in, you know, geographically, okay, I'm here right now. Boy, I'm glad I don't have to be here all the time, you know. And again, just catapulting off what that guy said, I'm like, wow.
I almost feel like it's a responsibility, maybe. I don't know. What do you guys think about this? Like to practice gratitude and to know, to appreciate what you have that so many other people don't.
Yeah. Chip, you are like the gratitude list guy. I do.
Gratitude.
I got to toss Jeremy's question to you. What would you say about that?
I think it's a obligation to yourself. I mean, especially when there's so many things that we have to be grateful for to begin with. You know, it's an obligation for me. I think I feel I owe it to myself and my creator to be grateful for what I've been given, the blessings in my life, the things that are good. You know what I mean? I definitely keep a gratitude journal. I definitely take time during the day to pause and reflect on one thing. If nothing else, something's going right. Even if something goes wrong, you know, my AC in the car broke, but I have the resources to fix it. Right. So, you know, I'm grateful I have the ability to fix it. And so that gets me into that space of appreciation. When you're in the space of appreciation, there's much less time for fear and anxiety to come in. You know what I mean? It's like the opposite. So
Yeah, good things come from gratitude too, right?
yeah,
It's like you're planting seeds everywhere that you express it. You know,
absolutely.
and it's hard to do it all the time and be always aware of it. Like, I mean, I had a recital just a couple weeks ago for all my drum students, which we do about once a year. And I took the opportunity when I was emailing them, several emails. Here's the time, here's the date, here's the order of the performances, blah, blah, blah. And then I wrote an email. I said, I just want to tell everyone how grateful I am for you to have you as students. What a joy to be able to work with you. What a privilege. And thank you for trusting me. And I got all these really nice messages back. And I was like, oh man, I feel that all the time, but I don't say it very often.
Yeah.
And it was a nice thing to sort of, visit that and share it. And everybody
When you say it out loud, something happens. There's something that makes it more powerful and more palpable, by acknowledging it vocally and telling somebody else. It's like when you love somebody, when you get off the phone and you love them, you say, "Hey, I love you." That counts. That makes a difference in the conversation to me.
Yeah, it really does. I'm so grateful for, D.E.C. One of the things that we did last year was we went to, and Jim, unfortunately, you weren't able to be there because of your health. But when we went to PASIC, and man, just hanging for that weekend and being together for those, what was it, like 3 days that we were all together and lived in an Airbnb and went out to dinner, and I'm a firm believer that if you're living life right, you're always kind of absorbing and learning stuff. And I learned so much that weekend just from hanging out with Jeremy. I mean, Jeremy and I had so many amazing conversations. Rick and I did too, and Tiana. I mean, we all did. But it was just something about me and Jeremy. We had these conversations. I was like, oh wow, I never thought of it that way. And Jeremy, you're really good at giving guidance without like, hey, wake up. You're really good at that. And I was very thankful for that. So all of this stuff that has happened in my life because I'm a drummer, I mean, my God, I can't believe it's happened. Matter of fact, you know what? Let me jump into this really quick while I'm still yakking. Jeremy, I put that picture up there. If you would share that real quick. So anybody that's seeing this.
Oh yeah.
So that right there was taken back in 1992. That's the house I grew up in. And that's me standing behind the house back in 1992, 93, something like that. And there are some times when I look at things like that, and I look at the things that I've been able to accomplish by being a drummer, and I have to say, agree with what Jim said. I didn't have these things happen because, I'm the greatest drummer in the world. There was a lot of passion, and there was a lot of people behind me that believed in me. And I think we have to recognize that within ourselves, that we have the passion. And I also think that we have to recognize, and Jim, kudos to you for saying it, we have to recognize that we can't get there on our own. We're not, no person can do anything on their own,
Yeah.
And so I'm grateful for all of that.
I had another profound vicarious experience through my son, also with Taylor Eitste. My son has for the last several years gone to Stanford Jazz Institute every summer and studied for a week or two with all the who's who of jazz piano royalty, Kenny Barron, George Cables.
Wow.
And they were hanging out one time late, and Taylor said to Evan, he said, "Man, you can be one of the cats." And Evan told me that, and I was like, "Oh my God." And he said, "Dad, if someone like that believes in me, the only thing stopping me is me."
Yeah.
And I was like, that stuff is powerful.
Yeah, it is powerful.
So powerful, right? It can change lives. Those words like that can change lives. And you don't always realize it when you say it. We've talked about this before, I know, on deck, like how important it is to share that. And like what Fred just said, he made a great comment. He said, one thing that goes hand in hand with gratitude is to celebrate the wins of those around me, right? You love people.
Yeah.
Positivity breeds positivity, and it's like contagious. Like Dom Famularo, what a perfect example. Like the guy embodied encouragement and support. Like, and you know, how many people's lives, I don't just mean were affected by, oh, he was such a great guy, he has a good influence. No, like literally change the course of their lives.
Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
what you say to somebody can be so powerful. Words can have such power. And as drum teachers with young children, we sometimes I should speak for myself. I sometimes don't acknowledge how important what I'm saying to them is. When you look at the trajectory of somebody's life, and when you compliment them, and when you genuinely appreciate something they do right. You know, when I was 8 years old, I was walking around telling everybody I want to be a drummer when I grow up. And everybody in my family was just like, okay, yeah, what are you really going to do?
Right.
Yeah.
What are you really going to do? And my grandmother was the only one, but my grandmother said, that's fantastic. You're going to be an amazing drummer.
Right.
You remember, you're going to have to work hard. You're going to all this stuff. And she just really believed in me. And that's one thing that enabled me to actually pull it off, you know, somebody in your corner. So that's powerful. What you say has power.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have to jump in when you spoke about Dom. So we first met in maybe the late 80s. And I was young then, and it was some type of conference. It wasn't PAS. It was another it was called the Drummers Collective.
Oh, yeah.
I remember that.
In New York.
And the gentleman who owned he owned a drum shop in New York, in Manhattan, and he was kind of the leader of it. So I went. I'm like, okay. Part of this too is you have to take risks, and you have to like be ready to jump, so that, because when I went to that, all kinds of things opened up. Like my mind opened up.
Right.
I met Dom, and I'm like, who is this guy? You know what I mean? And he stayed true to how I felt that day till the last time we spoke, and that he was alive. Like at first, I was thinking I couldn't tell like what it was all about, and then I kept coming and coming and coming, and I was so grateful that I got to meet him. He had, as we all know, he had this energy that nobody I've ever met.
Yeah.
He always had it, and I left that day thinking that, wow, if I could do a percentage of that,
Right.
You're going to be in a good spot. So very grateful for all the teachers that I had. And I didn't study with him, but like being with him, like we even drove up to Berkeley to do this panel, and he's like, hey Jim, I'm going to take the ferry, and then could you pick me up? I'm like, yes, absolutely. And we drove up to Boston. I got so much out of that drive.
Right.
I was on fire by the time we came home.
Yeah.
Like smoke was coming out of my ears.
Uh-huh.
Very grateful for all the teachers, and then the timing and along the journey of when you were learning, from your band director in elementary school all the way to your master teachers that you worked with, and they all had a certain part in where you were at that time and where they helped you go to.
Yeah.
And again, that during that time, you're just doing it, and you're not thinking about, wow, that all of these people have helped me along this journey. And that's part of my gratitude walk too. I go through the teachers.
Nice.
And when you spoke about your son going to that camp, I went to a camp in the late 80s, early 90s, Jazz in July in Massachusetts at UMass. And Max Roach was there. And it was 2 weeks that you were with Max, and you did M-Boom with him. And at the time, I was just, again, in this, like, I thought I was in a dream.
Yeah.
Because I knew who he was and what he was all about. But at that time, I wasn't thinking about, I'm grateful for this.
Yeah.
I was just living the experience of it. But now I'm sharing that with my students. And last week, we actually, I showed them Big Sid, and Sherry Miracle during Lent talked about, like, well, it's Fish Friday, so I want to teach everybody bucket of fish. And I never
I love it.
All I knew was that Steve Gadd did dot, but she was like, no, it's bucket of fish. And I'm like, whoa. So that made me think about, I'm going to do that with my kids this week that are, on a little bit more advanced level. But I said, I thought it was Steve Gadd who kind of came up with that. And then by accident, because I was talking about Max, that we put that on, and he did Bucket of Fish at the beginning of Big Sid.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whoa.
Well, that was a Sid Catlett lick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, he got it from Sid Catlett, and then
Right.
obviously Steve and different people got it from that.
Right.
And if you haven't listened to that album, it's called Drums Unlimited, and it's Max doing the drum also waltzes and Big Sid and all these other things. That has to be part of your listening. Has to be. So anyway, that made me think of all that.
Great. Love it. Love it.
I'm grateful for that conversation because now I'm going to go listen to Drums Unlimited.
Drums Unlimited.
Please do. Please do.
Max
That's
Roach,
amazing.
Drums Unlimited.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
And
Hey, so let me throw this out there, guys, and this is to our listeners too. What about times when you are struggling to find gratitude?
Ooh, I got one.
I got one too. Go ahead, Chip.
There's a picture I put, if you could share this. It's of my drum set. I have Dropbox on my phone. And my brother said, well, I text my brother a picture that made me happy. And I texted to him and he said, that's some shiny stuff. So I was like, when I'm a discouraged place, I have this collection, this folder on my Dropbox folder that's called Shiny Stuff. And I put anything that I'm super grateful in there. Picture of my mom, picture of my drums like this one, pictures of puppies. There's a benefactor. One of my students is a real estate investor guy, and he buys drum sets anonymously for kids that don't have them.
Oh, I love that.
And I get the kids to hold up a little thank you sign and send it to them. And that's some pictures of those. And I just scroll through that folder when I'm feeling down or not grateful. And by the time I'm done getting through the folder and looking over those pictures, I'm just in a state of gratitude. So that really helps me out.
Chip, God, you're such a pragmatist, man. And I just love it. Like, you got your lists. You're always writing down your goals. You're always thinking about steps to take to get from A to B, and not just.
Well, I mean, I'm bipolar, man. The snakes can jump out of the bushes at me at any given moment. So I'm prepared with different tools and actions.
Right.
I've learned this through therapy and years of counseling. Yeah.
No, that's deep, man. I mean, because all these tools that you're talking about are valuable tools for all of us.
Yeah.
And these are things you've had to come by the hard way to just deal and
yeah,
live.
well, like Jim said, I spent many years of my life not really grateful for many things, and then life started happening, and it just kind of brings you back to like, wow, I'm really grateful I had that time to spend with that friend before he passed away. You know what I mean? Things like I'm really grateful for that. And yeah, it's good stuff.
Well, I find too that the focusing on the positive is like it's contagious, not just for other people, but even for yourself. Like, if you surround yourself with positivity, positive friends, positive people, positive thoughts, positive energy, it feeds on itself. And if you surround yourself with negativity, your own negative cycling thoughts, negative people, negative feedback, that helps you spiral in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
And so, it's easy when you're in either of those spirals, at the top or at the bottom, to stay there.
Yeah.
That's the easiest thing.
Absolutely.
Is to stay where you're comfortable or familiar or whatever, where you're passive, let's say. And it's much harder to make the change, to break the downward spiral of negativity, to sort of help yourself get on the right track. Any thought? And just Chip, you just shared some great tools. Yeah, Jim.
You just, I love doing this because, man, everybody you get like poked, and it's like you think of something that happened.
Yeah.
So when I was going through that almost that year of recovering from open heart surgery, then we were going through some other things that were happening, and I was spiraling because I was catastrophizing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
it's easy to do.
Yeah, it's easy to do. And look, I want to be positive and be the rock for everybody in my life.
Right.
But at this moment, I was vulnerable, and I'm like, oh my, what's happening to me?
Yeah.
And so my son Ryan, who's going to be Dr. Royle, one day we were driving back from the holiday concert at the studio, and I actually asked him at that time. I said, "Could you please drive home?" I said, I was anxious and a lot of anxiety. He's like, "Absolutely, no problem." And on the way home, we had this conversation. He's like, Dad, your paradigm's all off. And then I brought up something, and he's like, that's when he said, stop catastrophizing. And they looked at me and he said, Dad, stop it. And I like sort of woke up out of that. And I was having like GI issues, and it was all my vagus nerve,
Right.
like being out of loop. And then after that night, all my GI stuff went away.
Whoa.
I got back on track by like he was giving me kind of what I had to give to my dad at one point when he was going through stuff. He just looked at me and said, Dad, stop it. And at one point, guys, I even asked him, because after the first ablation, I was feeling achy and pains, and I'm like, what's going on? And I said, Ryan, I'm being serious. I said, do you think I have bone cancer? He's like, Dad, no. He goes, you just had all this blood work done. You know, you don't. But that was that negative talk in my head.
Right. Yeah.
So I had to get into meditation and get into working on positive thoughts all the time. And even though I was still building along the way, driving to a gig around Christmas time, I said, look, I'm going to perform with people that I love, doing something wonderful. Right. And I talked myself out of it all the way to the gig. And we had a great gig. Not to say that I wasn't, like, I still was anxious still. I was still building it back. But eventually I did dig myself out of it.
You know, I found sometimes that when I deal with positive versus negative thoughts, I sometimes, before I get enveloped into that negative thinking, I've named that voice in my head. I call it Lester. When I walk by a mirror and I'm like, oh, you fat bastard, I'm like, shut up, Lester. You know? It's like, I'm not putting up with that. This is not what we're doing. We're not going to go there. I'm not going to take this and, you know what I mean, take the AC going out in my car and turn it into a DEFCON 1 situation. It doesn't have to get that way.
Yeah. Let me ask you guys this, because I think as drum teachers, we've talked about this before, that sometimes, you know, you're a drum teacher and sometimes you're a therapist, and it just happens, right? And I have many students that, you know, they share stuff with me, and it's all music related. Well, sometimes it's not, but most of the time it's music related, and we always steer it back to the drum lesson. But it can be heavy, right? I mean, and it kind of, you know, you're like, well, okay, so, you know, you got a long day of teaching, and all of a sudden all these things that you're carrying on your back from drum students, plus your own problems. How do you get rid of that and keep your positive viewpoint? Because that can be hard. That can be taxing. That can be hard on me anyhow. So how do you do that?
Well, and it happens. And one of the things that I say on that walk is that I'm a teacher, I'm an educator, and I'm a life coach.
Yeah.
And years ago, I didn't realize I was doing that, but that was such a big part of how I did it and how we built this wonderful family here, because the kids could trust me. And sometimes they would come in and I could tell right away, I'm like, what's wrong? What's the matter?
Right.
And most of the time they would let it out, and then we could get to the drums.
Right.
But, you know, I don't know. Without that, you can't move forward. And being, you know, because then they feel grateful for the fact that you actually took a moment to want to really talk with them,
to care,
something kind of light, something really heavy. And you know what, it doesn't affect me in that way, because the way I'm trying to describe this, because that I know that I'm making a difference, and what they have is I don't have it, but I can help them through it. So I'm not taking it on and putting that in my backpack, really, because I'm approaching it where I'm helping, and it is what it is, and that I'm trying to help them through it. If that makes any sense.
It does. Yeah, it really does.
I mean, that's what therapists do all day, right? Yeah. I mean, they listen to people's problems and they help them, and then I mean, gosh, I've had days where it's like, whew, that was a long day and it was only 4 hours.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Because there's such intensity with the drama and the stuff and the things that people are bringing to the table that aren't just about drumming. but I also, whenever I feel that way, I'm like, oh, there, I must have done some good work today. If that was, if I was, if I felt like I was working that hard,
Yeah,
it
and
was something important that was happening. And just one more thing, like
sorry.
Jim, you mentioned, about particularly kids. How often is it that kids have adults who aren't their parents that care about them?
Right.
Maybe it's a sports coach, maybe,
Right.
but this relationship is really important, and it's like you're a role model, you're a support, and you're a therapist, like we say, and that's important.
It is important. It's phenomenally important. I like that, what you just said, Jeremy. That sometimes the kids don't have the, anybody else in their life other than a parent, maybe a sports coach, and being a role model is and a helping hand to them is a big deal. It really is. And I like that term, Jim, that you said, because I agree with you. It's a life coach thing.
Mm.
I've had students, and I'm sure you guys have been there too, where I have one student that years ago he came in and he's like, I just want to be able to play a couple of grooves. Okay, cool. Give it a week. And so we worked on some grooves, and then, man, I'd love to be able to make it all the way through a Beatles song. Oh, no problem. Here we go. So a month later we're playing some Beatles tunes. And a couple months later he's got all the fills and the feel right. I can't even imagine being in a band. So now he comes into his lessons all these years later, and he's, oh my God, the guitar player this and the bass player that and the singer this, and so he's really done it. And I have to remind him, think backwards, think back to where all you wanted to do is play a drum beat. That's all you want to do is play a drum beat. And now you're having a really hard time with the bass player causing drama at the gig. That's kind of cool. I mean, you've gone from, I would love to be able to do this, to you're actually doing it. And as we know, being in a band or working with musicians, it's like anything else. People are people. You've got to put up with the people. We've talked about that on the show. And so that's kind of that can be heavy, though. That can be heavy. Like you said, Jeremy, you walk away going, oh my God, what a day. But you did good work.
I am grateful for the opportunity,
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Hey, I want to share a couple of comments that have come up. Jacob Sosa says, I admit that I lose sight of gratitude sometimes, and for sure I do too. When I'm so, what does that say?
Engulfed
with my drum teaching and gym job, I lose sight of how much good I do for others. Listening to you all is showing me to be thankful that I have this great responsibility. I have to be a teacher. Thanks. You're welcome. I mean, it keeps going back and forth, man. Like, when you were on, you inspired me. You inspired me to go be working out and to be more disciplined. You had your acronym about all the things I don't remember what it was, but, like dedication, perseverance, action, whatever it was, something like that. And, talking with Jim inspires me. Talking with Bart and Chip Deck inspires me every week. So
Deck inspires me. I'm so grateful this deck thing has even happened. I thought about that yesterday. It's like, how many things are better in my life because I've met you guys, and the list is very long, very long.
Awesome. I feel the same way. I said this about Jeremy a minute ago. Jim and I have never met in person, but we've met online. And the funny thing is, I know Jim. If I ran into him at the grocery store, I'd be like, bro, how are you? I mean, and it's so cool, the people that we've met and the friendships that we've made through Deck. The other day, every once in a while, my phone will ring and it'll be Chip. Bart, what's going on? How you doing? When I was on that tour last month, I was out for a while. And hey, man, you doing okay? How's it going out there on the road? You need anything? You eating right and you're getting rest and all this stuff. I mean, just a wellness check, and Jacob, I think you're right. It's so easy I know I lose sight of gratitude because there's times, like I was saying about what, my student, being burned out because of somebody in the band, or I'm really fortunate because the guys in my band, we are a family. There's a brotherhood there. But when you're on the road for, 3 weeks living in an Airbnb, humping gear every day gets taxing, and you can get on each other's nerves, and you can be like, would you just push the thing up the ramp, I mean, these things, the smallest little things will set you off, and you have to remember, wait a second, when I was 12 years old, this is all I wanted to do, and now I'm doing it. So why am I complaining? That
Right.
I have to.
Yes.
For me, I have to remind myself of that.
Well, that's one of the things that gratitude does, is it gets you from that I have to I get to.
Yeah.
When you're able to
Nice.
finally stop out and practice gratitude. Gratitude is an action. It's a verb. You have to practice it.
Mm.
Every night,
it's actually a noun, but I know what you mean.
No, I'm just saying, like, I would think of gratitude as a verb. One of my mentors in my life told me, you can tell a man what a man's grateful for by what he spends his time and his money on.
Mm.
Yeah. That's very true, man. That's very true. Every night before we go on, we do a huddle. Sam's like, okay, let's do a huddle. We all get in the huddle, put our arms around each other, and we say a prayer. Sometimes somebody will be there because they just happen to be there, or there's a monitor engineer, or the other night we were playing down in Palm Springs, and we were behind the stage, and it was open, and this guy was up talking to us. He could jumped in there. And the guy that jumped into the huddle, he was so thankful, and Sam says a prayer, and he just says, hey, God, let these people out here that came to see us tonight see you through us.
Mm.
And then at the end of the prayer, after we say amen, my saxophone player looks at me and, Bart, what am I going to see from you tonight? And I'll tell him what he's going to see. And then I'll say, Carl, what am I going to see from you tonight? And he'll tell me what I'm going to see. And then we give each other a high five. And then we jump up there on stage, and everybody's all nervous. And I hit the hi-hat 4 times, and the bomb goes off, And it's
Nice.
and I'm so thankful that I get to do that. I'm so just like, and there are times during the show where I'll sit there and I'll look around, and there's 800, 1,000 people dancing and screaming and having a great time and just going berserk. And I just, God, thank you so much for letting this happen.
And
Okay.
I was just thinking about some contrasting gigs I've had. I had a gig not too long ago. It was just completely empty, but there was a couple there, and they were dancing. And part of me was like, oh, what a crappy gig. Nobody here, playing for the bartender. And then I found myself grateful for the couple. I was like, wow, they had a good night tonight. And we had a good night playing for them and made a good night for them. And you know what? There's a connection. There's something to be grateful for. And it actually flipped my attitude a little bit. Instead of being down on the gig, I was like, oh, you know what? We had a nice connection that was very intimate with these people.
That one couple changed the whole energy.
Right.
It's like the words, words mean something. You say one thing to somebody and it's like, wow, thank you so much. It changes lives.
Right.
Who knows? Maybe that couple was on the brink of getting a divorce, and they were in there having an argument.
Who knows?
Right. Who knows? You don't know what people are going through, and your music made their night better.
Yeah,
and that's deep.
And their dancing made my night better.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. I was going to say something that based on what Chip said, and I know there's an actual saying to this, but the part of it that could be like everything today summed up is that we get to do this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So many people don't get to do what they love.
Right.
So how grateful are all of us that we get to teach the next generations of students, whether it's beginner, advanced, college, whatever it is, get to do this. And then we get to perform professionally.
Yeah.
And again, on occasion, people will say, man, how awesome is it? Like sometimes it's even your family. You've made a career out of this, and you're doing it. But you can lose sight of that a little bit.
Easy.
For sure.
I have trouble relating. My brother works at a tile factory and he does 13 and 14-hour shifts. And sometimes he does graveyard shifts. And we talk and he's like, how was your day? And I'm like, oh man, it was horrible. I struggled with this student and that student and blah, blah. He goes, oh, really? Oh, okay. That's too bad. You know what I mean? I'm sorry that you didn't have a great day playing your drums.
It's like the scene in Pulp Fiction where Bruce Willis comes back to his girlfriend and he's like had all this crazy stuff with the swords and the knives, and then she's like, "Oh," and she's like, "Oh, the blueberry pancakes weren't very good." Remember?
Right. I
Yeah.
love that scene. The guy's
Hey,
been through hell, and she wants
right?
blueberry
Exactly.
pancakes. It's ruining
It's
her
so
life.
good. Hey, James Harrison says, it's interesting how we can, isn't it interesting how we can put others' struggles into focus and offer them support, counseling, and comfort, but not recognize or be helpful to ourselves?
It's very
He also
true.
said, so much of your conversation seems more addressed to younger students. This was few minutes ago. How can you talk about the common college environment that is often more direct and blunt? Good stuff, James.
Or the high school environment that is often more. I have a student.
Yeah.
I suggested that she get in high school band because that's going to help prepare her deal with people and bureaucracy and learning how to deal with people. And the band director has her holding the sticks with her thumbs down here.
Oof.
And she said he's telling me to hold the sticks like that. And I was sitting there going, well, on one hand that's wrong, but on the other hand, you kind of have to do what the instructor of the class says. You kind of have to follow what they say while they're doing it. So when he's watching you, keep your thumbs down, and when he's not, then hold them regular.
Is this the new recognized drumstick grip?
That's what she says. That's what she
huh?
says he told her to do. Yeah,
That's cringeworthy. That's brutal.
yeah.
Right?
I'm thinking about calling him.
Yeah, you should. You should. You totally should.
Give him a
Educate.
call.
What's his main instrument?
I don't know.
It's
Okay.
not drums,
Not
obviously.
drums.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I mean, a lot of these band directors, they don't know, and they don't know what they don't know, and so they're like trying to have the answers because the kids are looking to them for answers, and instead of saying, "Hey, I don't know, go ask a drum teacher," they give them the wrong information.
You
At
might
the same
have
time, give him Jim's son's phone number because that kid's going to have carpal tunnel syndrome so bad that they can't see straight. That's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But Jim, did you have something? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Jim.
That's all right.
Well, James, you asked about, our conversation is centering around gratitude for the most part. And, in college environment, let's just call it a more competitive environment. It's challenging, and there's a lot of that one-upsmanship and who's got first chair and who's getting into the top bands. And there's a lot of failure, right? Because only one kid or two kids get the seat, and then, there's a pecking order and all that. And, I actually think that this kind of discussion is more relevant than ever to kids in those kinds of situations because, hey, you didn't get into the top group, you got into the second group, but the kid ahead of you is more experienced. Guess what? You have an opportunity to learn from them. You're in the second band. You made it into the program, and you're on track to get into the top band next year, let's say.
There's the brutal conversation. He's the direct conversation that he's talking
focusing
about.
on what you have instead of what you don't. I mean, I always tell my kids that are auditioning for those slots, and actually I'm working with 5 of them right now who have the audition coming up in 3 weeks for a very competitive high school jazz program here. I say, look, you can't control all the things. They're coming. Oh, this kid's coming from this other school. I heard him once. He's really good. Oh, but there's only one opening in this level group, and then there's 2 openings in this group. It's like, look, you can't control any of those things. You only can control what's in your power, which is how prepared you are, right? Yeah. How hard you're going to work to put yourself in the best position to do well at the audition. Everything else out of your control. There's no point in worrying about it. There's no point in stressing. Those chips fall where they fall. All you can do is feel, regardless of what the outcome is, that you did your best. That you have no regrets about leaving something that on the table you didn't put the time in. Right. And then you can feel, and then the gratitude can come from that. You know what? At least I feel good about how I put the effort in.
Right.
That's one of the things that I find really helpful about writing out my goals and planning the work and working the plan is when I find myself projecting like your students are doing. When I find myself projecting about what bad could happen or what is out of my control and worried about that, I can look back on my list and focus on the next thing to do. Right. What can I do about it? Which gives me a sense of power and sense of well-being regarding all those negative thoughts.
knowing knowing what you're dealing with at that moment, okay, this is what I'm dealing with, and I can go here. I think that in and of itself, is can help you be a little bit more calm, which is, you should be grateful for that, because we all know that going through an audition process or a gig or whatever, anything at high level is stressful, I mean, and a lot of times music schools and music teachers will put you through the ringer because they want to give you that stress environment. They want you to stress out.
Right.
So be grateful for that, because it's better here than on the gig, better here in the room than in the practice room than on the audition. Be grateful for that.
I got to share this. Last week, James was asking or saying about college, and a former student of mine should be a senior, but he changed his music major, so he's got another year to go, and he's at UConn. Go Huskies! But he hasn't really checked in that often, and I'm not surprised, because he's very talented. He did great here, but he's a little aloof. He was immature, and he reached out to me, and he goes, "You know what? I was just practicing some things out of the Ted Reed book, and it reminded me of." He was playing this page, and it reminded him of Art Blakey or something. He goes, "That's why I'm checking in." He's starting to realize what he did experience. So in his own way, he's grateful, and he wasn't back then, but he's starting to feel it and see it. And that meant a lot, that he, but what I did say to him, as I would, as whether he's studying with me or not, I said, well, that's wonderful that you're doing that. But you know what? Keep practicing and practice harder. And if you think you're practicing enough, practice more than that, because someone's going to be practicing more than you.
Right.
Yeah. Again, he's got 1 year left, and he wants to be doing what we do. So how could I not say that to him? All right, you're practicing, and that's great, and I applaud you for that. But practice more than you think that you're okay, and no, you're not. Keep practicing.
Yeah.
So
yeah. That reminds me of some letters or emails I've gotten over the years from some students who, when I was teaching them, I didn't necessarily feel like I was super connected to them or getting through, and they were kind of going through it. And then I would get an email, 2 years later, and they were in college and they were studying and they were playing, and they, I just want to say how much, the lessons meant, how much I learned. I was like, really? God, I had no idea.
Yeah.
I got no indication from you that was going on. And you don't always know.
You don't know.
Yeah.
I had a thing go down with my website where I needed help with my Shopify thing, and I posted a post on Facebook. Does anybody have Shopify experience? And out of the blue, one of my former students who is now a big tech guy, he's in the tech business. He said, "What do you need with your Shopify? I can help." And I said, "Well, I just need this picture and this thing put up." And he goes, "Absolutely, send me your password." And then, like, in 20 minutes, it was done. I was like, "Dude, what's your Venmo? How do I pay you back for this?" And he was just like, and I'm going to cry. He's like, "You poured a lot into me when I was a young man, and it changed my life."
Wow.
That's cool.
It's the least I could do. You know what I mean? I was like, wow.
Yeah.
That was pretty crazy. But it's great to hear that.
I love that story, dude. It's so great to hear.
Makes you feel grateful, right?
Gratitude on both sides.
We make a big impact on students, regardless of their age. There's a big impact that we make, and sometimes we lose sight of that. But it's definitely something to be grateful for, to have that responsibility, and I consider that an honor.
Yeah. Totally. Well said, Chip. Well said.
Very well said. And congratulations. That's a cool story.
Yeah, man.
I love it when you hear from a student from the past. I'm sure you guys have probably run into this too, where you're just out and about somewhere or whatever, or, and somebody comes up, "Hey, did you used to teach drums over at such and such?" Or, do you remember this one drum student? Yeah, I kind of remember. Well, that's me, and oh my God. And here they are holding a baby, and, and you're like, how did you get so old? I stayed young. What happened? Yeah, that stuff's great, man. That's so cool. Stuff like that, is that in and of itself is something to be so grateful for, like you said, Chip, because you poured so much into people, and I think gratitude in and of itself is kind of, heard it said that gratitude is the grease, gratitude is the oil, it's the lubricant that makes things, makes us want to do this. It makes us want to move forward with anything in life. I mean, for us, it's drums and drumming and music, but for any walk of life, just being thankful and grateful is incredibly, incredibly important.
It's
And
very important.
not always contagious, because not everybody will do it, but it's very important.
You know.
I've got something in there that you just made me think of. Again, I love about it because you guys, you're poking at everybody. It makes you think of something. I have a student now that who's in ninth grade. He's been here for at least 3 years. I taught his father when he was in high school, and he was pretty advanced and did great things. But he said to me, well, now he is the partner in an architecture firm. And he said, what we did back then had given me the discipline to do what I ended up doing with architecture. And again, advanced enough and talented enough to be in drumming, and he still is to a certain degree, but he's sharing it with his son. But when I heard that he wanted to have him come here with me, you're blown away. Like, whoa! Now I'm there's another generation, and how grateful are you for that?
Yeah.
I have one of my students is 70, I don't know, something, and he's been studying with me for the last 7 years. And I taught his kid when his kid was a teenager, and he had the drums sitting in his house for all like those years after his kid went to school. And then he's like, I think I might want to try.
Yeah.
And now he's like,
no kidding.
Yeah,
nice.
Right.
Nice. Going back the other way.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Very
really cool, man. At first, when you said it, I'm like, wait a second, who did what? I'm like, oh, no kidding. That's really neat, man. That's really cool. I think it's cool when you hear from people. I've wanted to do this my whole life, but I never did it. And now I'm finally doing that. And I know that's kind of maybe a caveat off to the side of what we're talking about, but I think that's really neat that that people will actually jump in and go for it. At 70 years old and like, hey, I want to learn something new.
That's inspiring to me.
It's incredibly inspiring.
All the adults who come to me as beginners, I'm totally inspired by them.
Especially when they're willing to go through those uncomfortableness of practicing and learning in that process of learning.
You're so
seeing it pay off.
Right. They're professionals and they're really good at what they do. They're nurses, they're doctors, they're plumbers, whatever. And then they're going to come be humble beginners again.
Yep. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Powerful.
It is. And it takes a lot of courage to do that. I mean, hell, go onto YouTube and take a beginner's algebra class. I mean, come on. I'm terrible at math. Advanced algebra or calculus. I wouldn't want to do that.
I know.
Yeah.
Nope.
I think that makes 4 of us.
Yeah. Hey, look, I count to 4. I start over again. That's all we're doing here.
Well, isn't that something that's kind of funny about being a drum teacher is when I go to learn a new skill, like I've got to go fix something, I struggle, I learn, I call somebody that knows and they try to teach me and they're like, well, you've got to figure it out and you're going to fail here and you're going to fail here. And it's like, I don't want to do the failure and I'm going too fast and I need to slow down. And it's like, listen to my own advice.
Right.
Listen to my own advice about learning the drums. I know how to learn.
Slow down.
You know what I mean? Slow down and take it one step at a time.
Yeah, right. Well, and that's why we need coaches too.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
We can be the world's best coach. And if we're learning something new, we need a coach too.
Exactly what James Harrison said about that. You know what I mean? We're really good about offering the help, but then when it comes to ourselves, we need to recognize how to be helpful to ourselves.
So
all the world's most elite athletes, Steph Curry knows how to do the workouts. He's been doing them his whole life, and he needs a trainer. He needs a trainer who's got a pair of eyes on him, who's seeing things from outside.
From a different perspective.
That's right. You can't be aware of your stuff in the same way that you are aware of other people's stuff.
Yes, you can't.
True.
Very well said.
Good stuff, man.
Very
good
well
show.
Said. Awesome.
Excellent.
Great comments, you guys. Lindsay and James and Jacob, thanks you guys. And Fred, thanks for tuning in and offering such great comments and food for thought. We will be back next week. What's going on next week? Do we know yet?
I don't think we know yet.
No, I do. I think next week is we were calling it the grass is always greener.
The
Oh,
grass
yeah.
is always greener. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You know that Wilson Pickett song? Don't let the green grass fool you.
Yeah.
Don't let the green grass fool
I
ya.
do. That's the truth, man. That's the truth.
Right on.
Don't let the green grass fool you. Don't you let it change your mind. It might be greener on the other side. Something. It's a really great song.
Yes.
Awesome.
All
Jim,
right, Jim.
thanks for being part of the show, buddy.
Thank you,
Oh,
Jim.
Again, my pleasure.
Yeah, always a pleasure to have you, Jim, and we'll see you again on here soon for sure. And hopefully we'll see you guys at Deck Day, April 26th in Orange, California, at the Aquarian Warehouse, and that's just 3 weeks away. Today's the last day to get the discounted registration.
Yep. Drummersed.com.
Yeah, we're giving away a ton of great stuff, and we'll have 4 great clinics, and it's just gonna be a super fun afternoon, a great hang.
And for signing up, you will be an Aquarian artist for the day. So whatever they have there for, that you want to buy, you will get it at artist pricing. You're going to get some freebies from them, but you get everything at artist pricing the day of the event. So that's kind of a cool thing.
Forgot about that. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Do we get artist pricing too?
No,
I don't think we do.
We have to pay.
We don't. We got to pay double price.
We got to pay double.
Yeah. We'll talk to Brady about that.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
See you guys. Thanks so much.